What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Jeremy Versillo. Jeremy, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening? I heard there was some pizza and Zelda in the offering here for you.
I actually haven't started yet because I'm on Pacific time, but yeah, my fiance is out of town, so I am eating food that she doesn't like eating in the house and playing some video games, which I haven't gotten to in a couple months.
There you go, man. Living the life. Sounds great. Got some hockey on. Not the busiest Tuesday, but some good action nonetheless. Let's just get into it here. We're going to start with the big news of the day. Big outjury. Tage Thompson makes his return to the Buffalo lineup. But a little bit bittersweet news for the Buffalo Sabres since Alex Tuch is out 7 to 10 days. So Tage is inserted into the lineup playing at right wing. Obviously, Buffalo glad to get Thompson back in the lineup. He was a bit slow before the injury, just 2 points and 5 shots in the 4 games before he went down, although he should get an incomplete for the 6 minutes he had on November 14th when he got injured. Thompson owners will be hoping that he gets right and back to his old shooting habits. He was averaging almost 4 shots a game before that 4-game mini slump that I mentioned. And then Tage coming in and Alex Tuch exiting the lineup means Casey Mittelstadt continues his run of top deployment. He has 8 points in the last 8 games before Tuesday, and he looks to continue to pile up big minutes. He's only fallen below 18 minutes once in that 8-game stretch, and 5 of those games he's played over 22 minutes. So a nice little run there from Mittelstadt, although you would assume that once Tuch gets back, they'll try to reunite that top line, but worth keeping an eye on. Watch those practice lines on game day tweets. And then we got some updates also out of Colorado. You want to take the head on these, Jeremy?
Colorado defenseman Cale Makar is not playing tonight. He got banged up at the very end of their last game Sunday. He is skating, though. It was a lower body injury, I believe, so him skating is a good sign. Sounds like he may be back in the lineup next game. I wouldn't be too worried about Makar, but for now, keep your eye on Devin Tays and hold on to him. Bowen Byram also had some nice even strength deployment last game. I don't think either of them have done anything so far today. Additionally, in Colorado, Valeri Nichushkin is out sick today, and their lines are all sorts of a mess. I'm not even going to go into it because that'll only last until Nichushkin is healthy, and with an illness, it's usually only one game.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually get back in. I think the Avs would love to get Makar back in the lineup. Certainly, they've lost 3 straight, all on the road to Arizona, LA, and Anaheim. But then again, who hasn't lost to Arizona lately? We'll be talking about them. Actually, we can go right into some Arizona news. We saw Sean Durzi injured very early in the game against Washington. He got an assist, and he had finally gotten off his skid. He had had 7 games without a point prior to Monday. But just a few minutes into that 8th game, he took a hard hit from Tom Wilson and left for the remainder of the night. Matt Dumba moved up to power play 1 in his absence, but of course we've also seen Juuso Valimaki getting some similar power play time on ice to Dumba lately. So that's another one where I would keep an eye on game day tweets. It's likely that Dumba and Valimaki will see some boost in power play time, but not exactly sure who's going to grab that top spot. Dumba maybe with the advantage having jumped in there to start the game, but you wonder too if Valimaki's just had enough practice with that second unit. They wanted to keep it together. Maybe with a game or 2 of practice, we could see a change. Durzi's blocks had kind of kept him relevant during that slump. That was about all he was giving you, though. The shooting was not great. Hasn't maybe quite produced at the level we hoped, but even still, can't imagine that his power play time is threatened when he makes his return. We haven't gotten any updates about Durzi's condition or the severity of the injury. One note about Arizona, though, they accomplished a remarkable feat, a 5-game winning streak over the previous 5 Stanley Cup champions. Very cool. The cherry on top was a 6-0 humiliation of the Capitals. If we think that they are capable of humiliation at this point, it was a game that saw Darcy Kemper and then Charlie Lindgren give up 5 goals on 10 shots in the first period. This is kind of a tangential question, but would you rather start a streamer goalie against Washington or San Jose right now? I think San Jose was the obvious pick early on, but they've picked up their scoring quite a bit and have been a little more competitive. I'm curious your thoughts here. If you were just thinking about, opponent opportunity, who do you want? The Caps against your streamer goalie or the Sharks?
I haven't looked at the numbers on this, but my gut would say the Caps take more shots. So I'm going with whoever averages more shots on goal per game. San Jose I streamed against a couple times this year, and it was like 3-2 win with 16 saves. And that's not really a lot of fantasy points. So let's go for the big swings and the 30 save games instead of the 16 save games.
Yeah, absolutely. It was almost kind of like the Carolina experience that you get every game, where it's like if they let in 2 goals, you're not coming out with very much positive goalie service. So yeah, I'm with you. I think I want to stream against the Caps, which is not something I expected to say at the start of the year. In other defenseman injury news, we saw Thomas Chabot go out. He's going to end up getting an MRI, so we'll get a little more information about that moving forward. Jeremy, who is seeing the benefit in the Ottawa lineup while Chabot has exited?
For the one game they've played since, Jake Sanderson saw significantly more power play time and even strength time. Additionally, Artem Zub had close to 24 minutes and 2 assists today. Not sure if that is a permanent thing. I think he is playing top pairing, so it may just be being the top 2 defensemen on your team. I've been a bit frustrated lately with Jacob Chychrun, though, who isn't really doing anything. Would you consider dropping Chychrun in any leagues, or is this just a cold stretch and the Chabot injury is a good chance for him to get right?
Yeah, I think at least while Chabot is out, I would be interested in hanging on to Chychrun. There just has been kind of a dearth of really valuable defensemen, it feels like, outside of maybe Matthias Ekholm going on a nice run. There have been some good options here and there, but I don't know that anyone has really kind of risen up to be a great option the way we saw at times last year. I guess I haven't looked at the schedule moving forward, but I would give Chychrun this run while Chabot is out. And if he's still unable to produce, you have to think it might be difficult for them moving forward. Once he gets back. But yeah, that's my only advice I think right now, is that I would like to see, Chychrun maybe make some, bonus production here, during this opportunity. All right. And then one other bit of injury news here. We have Jacob Markstrom, with a fractured finger, not going to require any surgery, but he is week to week now. Dan Vladar, I know I'm anglicizing the heck out of the name there, but I'm going to stick to what I know. Starting here on Tuesday night. But of course, Dustin Wolf was pulled up, a guy that, a lot of people have had, some, excitement for. He's got some pedigree. Vladar has been kind of a weak option this season. Just one quality start in 7 games. The silver lining was that was his most recent start before Tuesday. So maybe that's something to build on, although, he did give up a goal on his first shot to Minnesota, which, does not especially sound like building on his recent success. We'll see how the rest of this outing goes. It might also indicate whether Vladar or Wolf gets the next start. Wolf was okay, but not great in his one start against Ottawa. He allowed 4 goals on 42 shots. Obviously, really was getting pelted in that game. Did not get a ton of help from, the defensive side of things from the Senators. That was good for an .895 save percentage, but only a minus 0.35 goals saved above average. So he did about as well as an average NHL goalie would have done in that situation. I do think he has more to give. The only thing that worries me about this is this next stretch for Calgary looks pretty tough. They're home against Carolina and New Jersey. They're at Colorado, they're at Vegas, they're at Minnesota, and then home against Tampa Bay and Florida. Not all of those offenses have been clicking the way that you'd like to see, but it's definitely no group of pushovers, and most of them are in the playoff hunt. If Wolf does end up getting a majority of those games, that is not exactly a gentle road to start your pro career. So just be cautious. But again, he certainly, like you said, he'll probably be seeing some shots in those games. So hopefully if he can be league average or better, he'll at least get you some points there. It depends on what your league settings are. If you're going for rates and wins, I might be a little bit worried. But if you can, pile up saves and earn points from that, I think he could be a decent option. But again, you would be hoping, I think if you're looking for Wolf to get those starts, you'd be hoping that Vladar gets blown up in one of these starts here early on in this little sequence.
Wolf definitely intrigues me if he does get a true run as the starter. I know a lot of teams will do that with their top prospects when they have a 3 or 4 week span, just to kind of see where they are in their development. But if he's splitting 50-50 or as a speculative ad, not interested right now.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Certainly in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, those split goalies are never a great option for you, just because they're not going to give you the kind of opportunity that you need from that roster spot. So yeah, I'm with you there. And with that tough run coming up, if he's only getting every other game and you're hanging on to him and he gets blown up in one of them, like, what have you used that spot for, really? So I think that is valuable to keep in mind. All right, we are going to head into a quick little break here, but we will see you on the other side. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. Jeremy, we've seen some big movement. We've been talking about some defensive injuries, but we've also seen just some changes in situation for some key defense people here. Let's kind of run these down. I've got Kris Letang replacing Erik Karlsson on power play 1 for the Penguins. Penguins have been quite punchless lately. Really, some outstanding performances from their goalies that really just have not been backed up by any real production from the offense. A couple overtime losses, tough to see. So we've got trying to shake things up a little bit, maybe produce some more offense, getting Letang back into his usual power play 1 spot. Karlsson sounds like he's pretty okay with that decision. He's sort of, hey, hopefully this is the last time we change up the power plays. So definitely giving his vote of confidence to Letang. We also saw Travis Sanheim taken off the power play, with Cam York taking power play 1 in Philadelphia and Rasmus Ristolainen taking power play 2. And then Ivan Provorov joining Zach Werenski on the blue line for the power play for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Anything that you want to comment on with these three? Who intrigues you? Who maybe is, a wasted slot on that power play? Any of these folks, Letang, I think probably is owned in a lot of leagues, but the other gentlemen may be more widely available. Who do you like from this group of fresh-faced power play defensemen?
The funny thing is, the guy I like most from this group is actually someone who lost their power play slot and may get dropped because of it. Travis Sanheim is probably being the victim of a little bit of load management right now. Tortorella had a quote a while back, a week or two ago, about how they've really worked Sanheim hard and they're hoping to get him a bit more rest. He's playing 26, 24. He played 27-43 in their last game, which is a lot, even for a defenseman. And he's had a lot of minuses lately. Given what we've seen from Cam York and Rasmus Ristolainen, I expect Sanheim finds his way back onto power play 1 soon, and I think he'll continue to be productive with it at the kind of D3, D4 level that we were seeing earlier in the year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's interesting. I think also, I don't know. I kind of do like Provorov getting that power play 1 opportunity. He's a guy who's been kind of on the edge of valuable for an ad for a while. Now, I don't love the look necessarily of that power play 1. It's been Jenner, Laine, Fantilli, and then Provorov, Werenski along the back end. We did see Columbus blow a 3-0 lead here on Tuesday night to end up losing to the Kings, much to my dismay, since the overtime goal got a goal and an assist against my squad. That's just been how things have been going lately. But yeah, I think certainly Sanheim off the power play, I think he becomes a drop. Karlsson, you can't drop him. Obviously, you got to hold on, see if things change, maybe against his hopes, but nonetheless, you could see that happen. And obviously he's got a lot of talent. But yeah, I think of that group. Yeah, the Ristolainen thing is interesting. York, has been kind of a Cale and Addison-like guy, or I guess more like Addison in Minnesota than Addison in San Jose. I think he's been a little bit more involved. But yeah, of that group, I think Provorov is the guy that interests me most as a potential add, even if that top power play doesn't look the strongest right now.
Columbus actually scored on their only power play opportunity today. Unfortunately, it was the second unit that scored.
Well, that's bound to happen when you make some of those changes. And of course, not necessarily the strongest look on that top unit. So that second unit does have some talent there. So maybe not a big surprise. So another guy that Brian and Elon discussed on the Sunday mega show was Andrei Kuzmenko. Since that discussion, he got moved back to power play 1 and line 1. Brian called him a cut, although he was doing so without necessarily the information that we received afterwards when the show had already been recorded. But how do we feel about Kuzmenko? Does getting back onto that top line, top power play, does that move the needle for you? Do you look at him as potentially being a hold rather than a cut?
I'll admit that Kuzmenko's a bit of a blind spot to me because I have zero Canuck exposure in any league this year, which is kind of bad given how well they've been doing. But looking at his stats, I don't think any sort of deployment makes me that interested in rostering Kuzmenko. He's only playing 15 minutes and 20 seconds a game. He shoots 1.5 times per game. Yes, he's on a very good line 1 and a very good power play 1, but his shooting percentage and on-ice shooting percentage this year are kind of in line with what I'd expect, as opposed to the absurd 26.8% he shot last year. I just don't think Kuzmenko's really worth any more than some of the other third-wheel wingers with Bedard or McDavid or any other rotating cast you can have. So I kind of agree with Brian still.
Yeah, obviously that top power play in Vancouver is a great place to be, but he does kind of seem like the least involved guy out there. They're not asking him to pull the trigger. He doesn't pull the trigger all that often. And if he's not going to shoot, nearly 30% on the few shots that he takes, that really hits his value quite a bit. I also really worry that, 5 of his 22 games, has featured him shooting 3 or more shots, and 4 of those 5 games are only 3 shots. So he's really, not capping out very high. I've got a comparison for you, as far as the, kind of fifth wheel on a power play. Would you rather have Andrei Kuzmenko or would you rather have Nick Paul?
I think I'd rather a bit of Nick Paul because if I remember correctly, he's got a bit more peripherals to his name.
Yeah, he definitely had that one game where he came out just hitting everything in sight, so it does happen.
And additionally, he plays the net front position on a power play, which gets you more opportunities. You can score with a tip-in, you can score on a rebound, you can score off your shoulder or off your butt. It just gets you more involved on accident.
I love it. You nailed exactly what I was going to say. This happens sometimes. We had a nice mind meld there, but absolutely, just where he plays on the power play, better chance to be involved. He's not as likely to be just kind of passed around the way we sort of see happen with Kuzmenko. So yeah, I would rather be a Nick Paul. I'd rather hold Nick Paul than Kuzmenko, even with that new position. So yeah, in a deeper league, 14, 16 teams, maybe he's worth a hold, but I think in your 10, 12 team leagues, probably not. And even in KKUPFL with 14, I think he is right on the edge of cut worthy. Maybe hang on if the schedule looks good, but yeah, not so into him. All right. We got a hot streak, an odd hot streak, not the one that you would expect. We got to talk about him, though. Mikael Granlund. 2 goals, 5 assists, 18 shots, 5 hits, 3 blocks, power play 1 out there for the Sharks. He's even getting 60% of the shorthanded time, giving him that opportunity for those shorthanded points, which are bonus value this season in KKUPFL and obviously carry weight in other leagues. But of course, we're talking about the Sharks here. They have put up 3 goals against Ilya Sorokin with the game still going here on Tuesday night. Do you see this as a hot streak that is worth holding on to, that's worth grabbing this guy, or are the Sharks just not going to score enough for it to be important?
I think this is a hot streak worth looking at if you have some room on your roster. You know, if you are maybe a middling team that has some flex space, or if you've been hit with a bunch of injuries recently. He's played more than 20 minutes in each of his last 10 games. I'm assuming that he's going to hit it today because he's at 19-18 with like 4 minutes left. And he's on that top power play. The Sharks seem to have found their groove as a really bad team who's going to score more than 1 goal a game, as we thought they might to start the season. And his shooting percentage is actually low currently. It's at 5% as opposed to the 8 and 9% he put up the last 2 years. And he's kind of like a career 9 or 10% shooter, not a very good scorer, but can be counted on to put a few more in. I think with just the deployment he's getting, Granlund may look a bit more like the end of his tenure in Nashville, where, you know, he's a 55, maybe on a lucky year, a 60-point player, and just kind of gets you enough points to keep on the bottom of your roster for 3 and 4 game weeks.
All right. And then you have a little game prepared for us. You have selected some over-owned defensemen based on their level of KKUPFL ownership, which I think is probably a decent barometer for what a skilled, you know, where they should be owned in skilled fantasy leagues. But you're saying that these guys are over-owned. Introduce us to these 3 mystery bachelors here, who I see they are listed in the document here with no names. So I'm interested to find out who we're talking about.
I'll give you them as defensemen A, B, and C. You can decide which, if any, you're interested in rostering, and maybe even try to guess who they are, and the listener can play along too if they want to pause their podcast. Defenseman A has played 24 games with a goal and 12 assists, 4 power play points, 41 shots, 37 hits, 26 blocks. He also averages 1903 time on ice. That's good for 3.4 fantasy points per game in KKUPFL, and he is 72% owned in KKUPFL, although that's been dropping over the last 2 weeks, so people may be losing faith. Defenseman B has also played 24 games with a goal, 9 assists, 3 power play points, 52 shots, 17 hits, and 37 blocks, and 21 minutes time on ice. That's a 3.44 in KKUPFL, but he's 96% owned and plus 2% in the last 2 weeks. These guys are pretty similar. Defenseman B shoots a few more shots. Defenseman A gets a few more hits. Defenseman C, though, has 2 goals and 10 assists in 24 games played, 3 power play points, 38 shots, 21 hits, 37 blocks, and 21:30 time on ice, which is 3.38 fantasy points per game play. I guess the point I'm trying to say is they're all pretty similar, and I know you could go into the advanced stats and start looking at them when you know who they actually are. But what would you do with guys like this on your roster?
Well, they're all kind of below the Mendoza line that I like to see of 4 fantasy points a game, although if I really went through my lineup and started cutting everyone who wasn't reaching that level on the defensive end, I might not have any left. You know, I like a Bachelor B's 52 shots, only with 1 goal out of all of that. So, you know, I think that could be someone who maybe could see some improvement, although not giving you a ton of periffs, less than a hit a game. can I take a stab? Is defenseman B Torey Krug?
You are absolutely right. Defenseman B is Torey Krug.
All right. I think I did scoot through and see where some of the defensemen with 9 assists and 10 assists lie. So I was cheating a little bit here during the game, but I don't have everybody memorized off there, but especially the 96% owned and the plus 2%. I was thinking, maybe the Blues have been surging. This is a guy that people have been into. Obviously, a guy that I talked about as potentially being valuable, but 3.4 points. That's not necessarily doing it. Tell us about some of these other guys here. Who do we have for defenseman A and defenseman C?
I'm going to talk about defenseman A first because he's Pavel Mintyukov, who was a hot ad earlier this year, but I've kind of realized is a bit of a jag right now, just a guy. I think with Krug and Mintyukov, they're the type of players that people are holding because they feel obliged to roster 4 defensemen every night of the season, and could be better off streaming them out or grabbing a 4-game guy off the wire if they have an extra move. I know that power play 1 is often tempting, but they just aren't involved. They're not quite as uninvolved as Cale and Addison was in Minnesota. I really tried to get last year's Cale and Addison stats into this comparison, but Addison just does nothing on peripherals, so I couldn't make a realistic comparison there. But that leads me to defenseman C, who is actually a prorated defenseman from last year. It was someone who had played approximately 72 games, and so I averaged all their stats down to a 24-game sample. It's Sam Girard. Sam Girard is someone who, before he entered the player assistance program, was on the wire in most KKUPFL divisions, and he was only drafted in 2 of them as the 81st D off the board. I don't think Krug and Mintyukov are any more worth a roster spot than Sam Girard is.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When there were opportunities certain for him to move up the lineup, and we've seen, enough injury, I think, on the Colorado Blue line at times that, those opportunities have been provided. But yeah, that's a really interesting look. I appreciate the dive in there. As far as Mintyukov goes, Anaheim, the last 2 seasons has been kind of a start fast and slow down team. They've been those October darlings. But haven't been able to really sustain that. So I think that's an interesting one there as well. All right. Well, one last thing that we want to touch on. This came from Trev in the chat, who has been keeping us honest with the accountability channel, which has been really interesting. I know Brian and Elon talked about that some during the mega show. Question was not really a hot streak, but wondering what the interest level in Sharangovich is. Huge bump in ice time. The last 3 games, he's seen 20 minutes plus, getting line 1, power play 1 time. Jeremy, how are you feeling about Sharangovich? Is he someone who is of interest to you at this time?
Are the other top 6 guys in Calgary of interest? Kadri's been dropped in multiple leagues I'm in. Huberdeau shows signs of life once every 5 games. Lindholm's having a down season. I think he's still the 6th wheel in that top 6 for the most part, and I'm just having a hard time getting excited about Calgary's offense at all.
Yeah, it is tough, certainly. I can see why you might be hesitant there. They haven't been producing a ton. He's only had 1 assist in the time since he's been hitting those 21-minute plus games, although it's worth noting he has been shooting quite a bit, although there hasn't been a ton of scoring to go around in those last few games. So maybe someone to keep an eye on, maybe someone to watch list. But we could see that shuffle up, if he continues to not find a ton of success. Someone to keep an eye out for, certainly being given opportunity. I would probably take Kuzmenko before Sharangovich, just because Kuzmenko has been a guy who, I don't know, maybe the shooting, I'm second guessing myself immediately here because I do like the shooting. He had a 5-shot game in there. He also had a cardio session. So it seems like lower floor, higher ceiling than Kuzmenko. Although Kuzmenko's, ceiling can be fairly low based on that shooting. So, yeah, I look at them as fairly similar to each other. If you're interested in one, the other might be good for you. And if one is not available, could be an option for you. And with that, Jeremy, we have hit the end of our show. Thank you everyone so much for joining us, whether you are in the chat on Discord or if you are listening to the show on your podcast service of choice. Please be sure to give us a follow at Short Shifts KK. You can find Brian and Elon at Keeping Karlsson. Please use GameDayTweets.com to get all the best info from Twitter without having to actually go on to Twitter. Although I will say, just quickly, we did get a brief update. Thomas Chabot will not play Thursday. DJ Smith says they will provide a further update tomorrow. Doesn't sound good is the tweet from @SunGariash. So keep an eye out there, but not great news for a guy who has certainly struggled in terms of his injuries. Please make sure you visit Game Day Tweets and all the other sites we use to research our episodes: Yahoo, Frozen Tools, Icy Data, ShiftChart.com, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. John Reed is our digital media producer. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.